37. Listen for the word of the Lord. Again you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, I have, ever since, really since I've been a minister, I felt really powerfully that I needed to be a person of my word. If I said I was going to do something, I would either get it done or go back to the person I told and say I can't do it for whatever reason. And apologize and say I cannot do what I said I would do. So I've been really working hard for 25 years or whatever it has been on trying to be a person of my word. I think it's really, really important, and I look, and it's here in the scriptures. Jesus talked about it. However, I did fail once in a rather spectacular fashion, and that was a funeral. Of all things, one of the worst things you could mess up on is a funeral, and I did, and I had forgotten about the funeral, just flat out forgotten. It wasn't a person in our church. It was a person outside the church who I said yes to the funeral. At the time, I was ill. I was really, really very ill, and I never should have said yes to that funeral. And I never should have, and after I said yes, I should have gone back to those folks and said, look, I'm too sick to do this. So there was a kind of a reason that it happened, but still, I've never been happy about that. Every time I think about it, I think, I should not have gotten involved in that funeral, because it was really bad situation. But that was the only time it's happened. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I've never messed up anything for a parishioner, never, not weddings or funerals or anything. I've always been a person of my word. And I think ministers, how are we judged? We're judged by whether we are people of our word, whether we have integrity, whether we are honest and truthful, and you can depend on us. That's how we're judged. It's not like we're an engineer, where we're judged by the drawings we do and the plans we do, and then you put the system together and it works. Then right? And you're a good engineer. Yeah, you have that. Yeah, you put it together and it works. If it doesn't work, you're not a good engineer. So it's not like that in the ministry. It's all our word, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about that today in this passage from Jesus from Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. Okay, so the first thing is what does it mean by oath? Okay, a vow or an oath. Okay, so we have to go back to the 10 Commandments, and that commandment that says, do not take the Lord's name in vain. Because what that means is that's an oath or a vow. And so it's not the modern concept of cursing, per se. That's wrong, using God's name in a curse. But instead, what the 10 Commandments is saying is that you shouldn't say to somebody, in the name of the Lord Most High, I will do this. Because then you've made an oath, you made a vow to the Lord, to God, that you will do what you said you're going to do. And so you better do it then. You better do it. So thus the Ten Commandments says, don't make a vow or an oath in the name of the Lord, the God Most High, and then turn around and not do it. Not get it done. Because then you've taken the name of the Lord in vain. And so you have, and so that's what that means in the Ten Commandments. And then we look at other passages. Genesis chapter 22, verse 16. God swears to the children of Abraham. God swears an oath in God's name that God will make a great nation of the children of Abraham. So that means that if you swear an oath and you use the name of the Lord, then there's power. There's power behind that. Thus, the problem is you need to fulfill it. So even God swears an oath in the Lord's name. The Lord swears an oath in the Lord's name. Then you have, say, Genesis 25:33. You have Esau swearing an oath in the name of the Lord, and he swears away his birthright. So there's, once again, powerful. You use the name of the Lord, there's power there if you swear that oath. And then Judges 11:30 is the story of Jephthah, who made a foolish oath in the name of the Lord, and then ends up, his foolish oath leads to his daughter dying. So it was a foolish vow, and he had to fulfill it because it was in the name of the Lord. Okay, so oaths are considered powerful, and so there's very bad things that happen when you swear something in the name of the Lord and then you do the opposite. So, for example, King David. So as a king and a child of Abraham, he is sworn an oath to the Lord that he will follow the law of Moses. Everybody, all the children of Abraham, have sworn an oath, made an oath to the Lord that they will follow the law of Moses. So he breaks the law of Moses when he kills Uriah the Hittite and marries Uriah's wife. And so what happens? The Lord comes and punishes him for doing that. And then Absalom, King David's son, this is 2 Samuel 15:7, turns on his father. So once again, there's an oath here. The oath is to God, right? Honor your father and your mother. So there's an oath to the Lord in the Ten Commandments, and then there's an oath to the king. I will serve my father, the king. And so he turns on his father. He launches a rebellion against King David, puts himself on the throne, and then is killed in battle. So there's power in oaths, in vows, and if you break them, if you don't fulfill what you say, there's power, there's bad stuff. Bad stuff happens. And then Jesus' story about this, Matthew 21, starting in verse 33, the story of the tenants who turn on the landlord. Tenants who turn on the landlord and then kill the landlord's son is really a story about an oath taken to the Lord. That's like the agreement between a tenant and a landlord. That's the oath we take to the Lord to serve the Lord and to do the Lord's will. We kind of take that as an oath as believers. We take that as an oath. And what they do is they turn on the Lord's son. They turn against the Lord. And in the story, it's the landlord. But Jesus is talking about the Pharisees and Sadducees. That story is strictly aimed at them, and they know it. That they have turned against the Lord by turning on and killing the Lord's son. So that's the same type of thing. A powerful oath or vow to the Lord, and then you betray the Lord by not doing the Lord's will. Okay. So Jesus comes to this in these are his teachings. I love chapter 5 and 6 of Matthew because they're the best teachings in the world on living. on whatever, a life. These are the best 2 chapters in the world ever written on life. Everything about life. This is how we should live. All here, really simple, really wonderful. And oaths, it's an important part of it. And so he says, if you made a vow to the Lord, if you made an oath to the Lord, you should keep it. Yes, absolutely, 100%. But then he says, do not, and then he says, but I tell you, do not swear or make an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne. People did that. Instead of the name of the Lord, they'd say in the name of the heaven and earth. And people, then it says, do not swear by earth, and people did that. Or by Jerusalem, that was a really popular way to make an oath. By God's city, Jerusalem, the great city, Jerusalem. And then he says, and this is great, and do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Okay, this is now my theory of my work. I'm working on this theory, and I'm going to write a book. I'm telling you, I'm going to write a book someday. It's going to be a great book. Jesus' humor, the humor of Jesus. I think he's being humorous here, because nobody swears by their head. No biblical scholar can find any example anywhere in biblical rabbinical literature about this, what Jesus is referring to. So I think he's taking an extreme example that should make you smile and say, you can't swear by your head because you can't turn the color of your hair. Of course, that was 2,000 years ago. People turned their hair color different all the time now. My soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Monet, never know what color hair she's going to have on any particular day. But so there it is. There's another example of something that might be funny, and I'm going to argue that in a book someday, and then everybody's going to laugh at me and tell me I'm wrong. Okay. Simply let, verse 37, simply you let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So what does he mean by that? He has set this up by saying we should honor our vows to the Lord. But then he turns around and says, don't make vows. Don't make oaths. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. And so what does he mean by that? He means be a person of your word. And if we look at the bigger context of this passage, starting in, say, it's chapter 5, verse 17, chapter 5, verse 20, really tells us what he's getting at here. Chapter 5, verse 20 of Matthew. I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Your righteousness surpasses the Pharisees. That's what it's about. Because, once again, oaths are a big deal. And so the Pharisees and Sadducees like to make a big deal of their faith. When they gave money, they made it a big deal to the temple. They made it a big deal. They made a big deal out of it. When they prayed, they would pray in public. They would make a big deal out of that. And their clothing, even their clothing. Jesus mentions that their tassels are long and all this. There are symbolic pieces on their clothing that are symbolic, that are found. There are references to tassels in the Old Testament and things like that. And so that's long and beautiful. Shows how faithful I am to the Lord. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So it's, once again, your righteousness exceed that of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Let your righteousness exceed that. That's what he's talking about. And so here he's saying, don't make a big thing out of it like they do. They make a big production. Just be a person of your word. If you give your word, follow through on it. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. So what does that look like? Okay, today, nobody goes around publicly making a vow in the name of the Lord and then in front of witnesses and all that. That would be typical of 2,000 years ago. Instead, we have salespeople. I've always admired people who can sell, who are salespeople, real estate agents and salespeople for whatever. I've always admired, I've always wanted the gift of being able to talk somebody into something. But at the same time, that gift has a very negative side attached to it that I'm glad I don't have. And that is the gift of promising too much, which is what I run into with people who are really good at sales too often. They promise too much. I remember when we sold Betsy's mother's house, Betsy's mother passed away, hired a real estate agent. Actually, we didn't hire the real estate agent. Your brother hired the real estate agent?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. And when it came down to the deal, we're there negotiating the deal, right? Negotiating the deal. Guess whose side she was on? She was on her side. She actually argued against us, against Betsy and me, in order to get us to drop the price more so she could get her commission. Make sure she closed the deal, get her commission. Oh, I was so mad. Right? I was so mad. Because here I was negotiating with two groups. I was negotiating with the people who were buying, who wanted to buy the house, and that's fair. That's the way it should be. And I was negotiating with this dumb real estate agent who was supposed to be representing us.
You have to reduce the percentage.
What?
Commission has to be reduced.
You know what, Doug? At the time, I didn't realize what was happening. It was only afterwards that I thought about it and said, you know what? We got taken. We were taken, by this lady. So it's experience, right? Experience. Yeah, chalk it up for experience. Now, we Christians have salespeople who are gifted by God. We call them evangelists, right? We call them evangelists. And they have the gift that I want, and that God smiled and said, no, Bill, you're not going to be good at it. Okay. And so, what is Jesus saying to evangelists? Jesus is saying, we need to be better. We need to be better. Because the world says to salespeople, you need to close the deal. That's what the world is saying. That's what the world teaches. Close the deal. Whatever you have to do it to close the deal. Evangelists, no. Christians, no. Evangelists, no. You let your yes be yes and your no be no. In other words, you have to have integrity. You have to be good at being a salesperson for the Lord, but at the same time have integrity. And that's, met a lot of good evangelists in my lifetime. Some of them have integrity. Some of them, but that's what Jesus is teaching his followers. Be better than what the world says you should be. Be better. Let your righteousness exceed that of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Executives, for example. Pastors are executives of a small organization. Some pastors are executives of a large organization. I happen to be the executive of a very small organization, really small. And so, in the real world, executives have to get results. Have to get results. Okay, so I worked in the banking world for a while, and for a while I was doing mortgages. So we were always under pressure to close the deals, right? Always under pressure. I wasn't the salesperson, but instead I was the guy who put all the paperwork together and checked all the stuff and made sure that you could repay your loan. Underwriter, that's what I would be called, an underwriter. So I made sure that, all that stuff. And so we were under pressure, get the job done, get the paperwork in, get it approved, close the deal. That's the way the real world works. And my boss was under pressure from his bosses to get it done. Then I moved to commercial banking, and I thought, this is great. Commercial banking is so much better, bigger deals, more money, yeah, it's so great. And then the economy went bad, and I ended up being a loan collector for my division, because everybody ended up being a loan collector in my division. You know, that's what the economy went bad, you got to collect the money. So I saw terrible things. Terrible things. We had a boss who who talked to the lawyers in my presence about if we could put a lien on an electric wheelchair. We got a guy who owed us money, and try to squeeze $20,000 or $30,000, because it was a $30,000 wheelchair. Try to squeeze $30,000 out of him by, I don't know, taking the wheelchair from him and selling it. I have no idea what he was thinking, but I remember that conversation. that was Dr. Death, we call him. John Kimball. Oh my goodness, he was our boss. He was our fearless leader. He was the executive in charge of our division, and he was just awful. But he was under pressure to get results, and results meant money coming in from our customers. And that's what he did, and ruthlessly. Pastors need to be better. We need to be better, right? We need to be better. We are executives of God's, these wonderful blessings that God has given us, churches. And we cannot be results driven. We cannot be results driven. Jesus says, our righteousness needs to surpass that of the Pharisees and Sadducees. We cannot be like the world, which is results driven. How much did you bring in this quarter? Once again, I've met a lot of pastors over the years. Most of the large majority have integrity. Or at least we try to have integrity. We're not perfect, but we strive for our righteousness to exceed that of the. Every once in a while, though, I've met a pastor who was results driven. And that's always a disappointment for me, to see that. Very disappointing. Because here it is, right here. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Let your righteousness exceed that of the Pharisees and Sadducees. We're not to be like that. We're not to be results driven. We're not to be, we need to be better than what society says that we should be. Society says, follow the rules and you'll be okay. And Jesus said, no, be more than that. Be better than that. Be better than following the rules. And so everything he teaches, he says, yes, we should follow the rules, and then he pushes us to be better. He pushes us to do more than what the rules teach us. He pushes us to the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan story is a story about going beyond the rules, being better than the rules. The golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Do, in other words, go beyond. The rules say, don't do any harm. The rules say, don't do any harm. Jesus says, go beyond that. Do more. Do good. Be a blessing. Do God's work in the world. And so that comes back to this righteousness exceeding the Pharisees and Sadducees. They avoided doing wrong. They followed the law of Moses and avoided doing wrong. And they made big displays. When they were going to do something, they made big displays out of it. And Jesus says, no, that's not good enough for us. For us believers in Jesus Christ, us followers of Jesus Christ, those of us who want to do the Lord's will, not good enough. Not good enough. Simply let your yes be your yes and your no be no. Be a person of your word in all things. In all things, be a person of your word. And don't fall for what the world wants, which is big, pay attention to me, pay attention to me? No. Don't fall for that. And don't let what the world is, that avoiding doing wrong, go beyond it. Go beyond what the world is asking us to do. Always go beyond it. Always go beyond it. So I love this passage. I've always loved it because this is my, somewhere where I feel comfortable, where I feel good. Like I have tried for my yes to be a yes and a no to be a no. And if I can't, then I always say sorry. Sorry, but I tried. Sorry, I tried. Didn't work. So this I feel comfortable with. Always felt good, and I always liked that. And like I said, the world around us always is constantly pulling and pushing us, and we need to stand firm on the gospel, which ties in very nicely to the Bible. Today's adult Bible study we're going to look at downstairs in the video is focusing on the gospel, making sure that our church and our lives are really focused on the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we should be about. That's what every single church in the world should be about. Focusing on the gospel of Jesus Christ and doing everything we can to live the gospel the way Jesus taught us. So pray for that, my friends. Pray for our church. Pray for Christians all around the world, and pray for everybody to the gospel above all else, the gospel above all. Okay, so let us now go to our next song, our last song today. Lord, I need you.